Hello again, Year 5, it's Mr. Hattersley. This is your second lesson, so Tuesday's lesson on your biography, and like I said last time, ideally we would be doing this in school properly, but obviously we can't at the minute, but I'm sure when we do go back to the literacy topic that we do will be brilliant, and I'm sure you'll be just as good as when you left. That's both classes. Right, so in last lesson start, we had another look at relative pronouns and relative clauses. These were the relative pronouns again, so they're whose, which, who, that, and whom. And we've got to add them into the sentence so they make sense. So Sadiq, something, had a pen run out, put his hand up to ask for another one. The boy, something you met last week, is coming to visit. So, firstly, I want you to add the correct relative pronoun, and then your challenge at the bottom down here is, can you identify the main clause and the relative clause? Okay. Right, pause the video here and have a go at it, and I'll reveal the answers in about 2 seconds. So, Sadiq, whose pen had run out, put his hand up to ask for another one. The boy, whom you met last week, is coming to visit later. I would have also allowed you to have who there as well. So, the main clause in the first sentence is the one that makes sense on its own. So that would have been this one. Sadiq, whose pen had run out, put his hand up to ask for another one. If we ignore this sentence here, does put his hand up to ask for another one make sense by itself? No, it doesn't. So the relative clause, which I'll do in red, would be this one. The other one, the boy whom you met last week, makes sense. Is coming to visit later. Doesn't make sense by itself because you don't know what or who is coming to visit later. And there should actually be a comma just there. Oh no, it shouldn't. It should be there and there. The boy who you met last week is coming to visit later. So, next one, I want you to have a go at your challenge on the relative clauses. Where in these sentences, are the relative clauses placed? Draw a circle around them. So the class were well behaved on the school trip, which made their teacher proud. William, who was wearing his favourite shirt, was going to the school disco. So pause the video here, have a go, and then play it again when you're ready for me to show you the answers. So, let's have a look. The class who were well behaved on the school trip, which made their teacher proud. So the relative clause is the bit that doesn't make sense by itself. So it would be this bit, wouldn't it? Which made their teacher proud. If we were to cut that off there and not have any information, we wouldn't know what had made their teacher proud, would we? Okay. So William, who was wearing his favourite shirt, was going to the disco. So if we just said William was going to the disco, that would make sense. We'd know that somebody who's called William would be going to a disco. But it's this bit because we don't know. Without that bit, we don't know who's wearing their favourite shirt or isn't. Okay, next page. Again, pause the video here and have a go, and I'll put the answers on the screen now. Because that one wouldn't make sense by itself. So I would always look for the relative pronoun, and then the bit that doesn't make sense should come after that. So we met yesterday at the park. Don't know what it means, do we, without this bit? Amir found the missing cat that his neighbour had lost. that. So it's his neighbour had lost. We don't know what his neighbour had lost before we had that, did we? Right. So we're going to move on now to our biography. So, what are we writing? Why are we writing it? Pause the video. Tell the person who's watching it with you, or just write it down if that helps you. Who are these two astronauts? What do we already know about them? Pause the video here and have a think. I'll give you a couple of seconds and then I'm going to move on. So, what is a biography? A biography is something. Tell me. Tell the person sitting next to you. Let me know. Write it somewhere so I can see that you know. There's a video here telling us what a biography is. I'm going to put that on the top of all of your worksheets for today. And you should be able to just type it in. I know it's a bit of a pain, but like I said, unfortunately I can only do this 15 minutes. And the video would mean that I go over that. So, I want you to think about this question. I told you in the last one, how is a biography different to an autobiography? Pause the video in here. Watch this video link that's at the top of your sheets and tell me why it's different. Okay, I'll move on there after you've finished pausing it. So, this is all about Tim Peake. So, I want us to read through this. This is a few facts about what a biography might look like. So, it says he was born in Chichester, England, on the 7th of April, 1972. Tim had a passion for adventure from an early age. The Cub Scouts and School Cadet Force gave him a taste for the outdoors, and he was never happier as a young boy than when he was hiking, kayaking, or climbing. So, is that there about his time in space? No, it's not, is it? It's about what he was like as a child. We're not just, like I said in the last one, we're not just talking about what he did in space, we're also talking about his life as a whole, speaking about that in general. It also says, we know that from yesterday he went to the Royal Military School, and we know that he was a soldier. So, as a soldier, he was a natural in the air, absorbing every detail of training and longing to expand his knowledge with each flight. He gained his Army Flying Wings in 1994 and was awarded Best Student on the Corps. By Flying Wings, it means he passed a test and he was allowed to fly a helicopter. So he was a helicopter pilot. He knew something about flying things. So what does that tell you about how he was planning, or how it might have been appropriate, and what skills he had for going to space? After nearly 18 years of military service, Tim left the army in 2009 to work as a senior test pilot for AgustaWestland, which is now called Leonardo Helicopters. At the same time, he was surprised by seeing an online recruiting advertisement from the European Space Agency. He underwent a year-long astronaut selection with over 8,000 other candidates. But previously, UK citizens have been unable to apply to become a European astronaut. So Tim leapt at this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So out of 8,000 people, he was the one chosen to go to space. And I think that's quite amazing, isn't it, really? So, I'm going to ask some true and false facts now about Tim Peake and Helen Sharman that you will have learnt about yesterday and looked at through both of them. Don't worry if you haven't looked properly at the one or the other. Pause the video now and have a look through so you know what you're doing. Okay. So, Tim Peake used to fly aeroplanes in the army. Have a think, is it true or false? Pause the video. Right, the answer is true. He did used to fly. Sorry, I'm thinking of helicopters. It's false. He used to fly helicopters in the army, not aeroplanes. I read that wrong. True or false? Helen Sharman studied in Sheffield. True or false? Pause the video. It is true. Not only did she live in Sheffield and was born in Sheffield, she also studied at Sheffield University. True or false? Helen Sharman was the second British person in space. Is that true or is it false? Pause the video. Have a think. It is false. She was the first British person in space. And next one. Tim Peake phoned the wrong number from the International Space Station and said, "Hello, is that planet Earth?" This is a different one. I want you to try and have a guess at this one. This is just something that a fact that I found, or is it? Pause the video. It is true. He really did do that, so you can tell that he's probably a bit of a joker as well, can't you? So, after we've just done that, a bit of a warm-up, I want you to think about being a biographer, being a person that writes a biography. It's like being a detective. We have to look at lots of different evidence to discover the facts and reach a conclusion. Today, you will use what you have read about the astronauts to make some conclusions about them. I don't know why I put him there, because there's two of them. It's my fault. I do apologise. What was unique about them? Why were they so great? Okay. So, there's some evidence here about Tim Peake, and there's also some evidence about Helen Sharman as well. If you want to do that, if you were doing about Tim Peake's just the one that I've attached. Okay. So you're going to use the evidence that you've got here. So it says Tim Peake used to be an army major for 18 years before retiring and becoming a helicopter training pilot. Next to that, I want you to tell me why that means he was influential, why that meant he was such a good astronaut, why that meant he was a good pick to be an astronaut, okay? Helen Sharman attended the University of Sheffield where she studied chemistry, gaining a degree and becoming an expert in her subject, which was chemistry obviously, which is a type of science which involves chemicals, hence why it's called that. So, next to that, if I was writing why, I'm not sure why it's gone like that, that's probably why. If I was writing this about Helen Sharman, I might write that this means influential she studied, to become an expert in chemistry, which meant she could find new chemicals and experiment with them properly in a great way, and she's helped people's understanding of space so much. She has helped understanding of space by learning much as possible the new chemicals, found there. And that's just something that you do next to it. You might write that Tim Peake had gave a science lesson from the International Space Station. This was watched by young children all over the UK. I haven't got time to write it, but you might write something like, he was so important because he helped young people get interested in space, find more out about space, live from space. That's going to be so important. I know if you were watching that, and I'll try and find the video of it when we get back to school normally, it meant they were so interested because they were watching a science lesson live from where it was all happening. So, if you are in my red group, you'll know you are. You have just a sheet like this. All you have to do is just write here next to it the different bits why they're so influential. If you're in my yellow group, you'll write on this one here where I've given you a box to do it. I know, trust the red group's presentation. And if you're in Miss Conley or Miss Saeed's group, you're going to have this page to do it on. Okay, I hope you enjoy finding some bits out why they're so influential, the two astronauts, and I'll see you soon. Have a lovely day. Goodbye. Stay safe.